breaking physics. So what this looks like is, depending on what orientation they start with, if they were falling, they could go up to 180 degrees of rotation, so they're upright. This requires that they know which way is up. And the coolest part about this is that they can make this rotation without breaking their spine. That's something that most people do if they try to. Because they don't have any angular momentum. This is the biggest issue here, is they have to start spinning and stop spinning in air without angular momentum, and that's nuts. So they have a couple different types of dynamics. There is the, depending on what height they're falling from. So I will only be demonstrating between 1 foot and 6 floors. And otherwise, there's some other things that happen.
Oh, you want me to go up a few floors?
No. So, and then I'll talk about the dynamics with that as well. This has a lot of really important applications. So there were some neuromechanical applications. I don't really remember what they were because they didn't interest me. But what is really cool is, think of like a satellite. It has to orbit the Earth, and the only thing pulling it in the orbit is the centripetal force. So there's linear momentum, but there's no angular momentum, and it still has to stay on track with its target. And so it has to use the same mechanics the cat is using, where it spins itself in air without angular momentum provided. I'm going to be combining the joint and, so this is the little thing that Dr. Scott uses. I'm going to be joining the first two and last two, joint and task space, as well as the other two. So in task and joint space, thanks to the fact that it doesn't have a collarbone and cats are crazy flexible, they're able to do some nut stuff. Here's some math, but instead of math, I have gifts, because gifts are easier to understand. So if you take the right hand rule, you take your thumb, and your thumb is the direction of the vector. Your fingers are the direction of twist. You can follow that, bam, bam, that top orange there, that is what the cat is doing. So if the cat forces its body into this position that I can't do because I'm not as flexible as a cat, and then twists itself, so that's what the cat is doing, physics will respond and say, hey, I want 0 angular momentum. And so it will spin, it will have the sum is 0, and will spin in the opposite direction, and then it just stops its movement, and it immediately ends where it wants to be, assuming it knows which way is up. So, muscle and neural space. There's a couple things that are involved. They have gyros in their ears. Fun fact, you do as well. Everyone has these. And they also have eyeballs. That's another thing you have. Those are both used for proprioception purposes and knowing which way is up. If it has an injury to its inner ear or has bad eyesight, this can make it more difficult for the cat to know how to do its landing properly. But otherwise, thanks to growth, they're able to do this movement within 8 weeks guaranteed of growth, some as soon as 6 weeks. And yeah, the only, again, I talked about the dynamics are different depending on where they are. What we were demonstrating also is the same stuff they use when they are in space. We only know about that because of some studies that have been done. And just for funsies, here's a comparison of the neural, that part, compared to a cat and a human. They have a lot in common. There's a few differences, but that's not super important with what I'm looking at. So the caveats we have, if it's too high, the cat will reach terminal velocity. This is why the 6th, 7th floor thing is a deal, because once it reaches terminal velocity, it will feel weightless, okay? So it's gonna do the same thing that we do when we're parachuting. It wants to maximize its surface area to mass ratio to minimize its falling velocity, because it wants to have the minimum amount of injuries. So if we did the same thing without a parachute, we would die, but thanks to the fact that they are small, they're doing the same thing that lots of animals take advantage of, which is the fact that they aren't really heavy and they do have a lot of surface area, and so they can do that all the time. Cats are kind of in the middle, so it's not super optimal if they're falling off buildings. However, based on studies where they would look at cats that had been taken to the vet thanks to the fact that they had jumped off out of the apartment building from where the person lived, they were able to find that there's a 90% survival rate past the 7th floor, and injury rate was actually really low, where only about 50 to 60% of the cats were injured as well. So they're quite incredible individuals. And then if it's less than a foot, then it's just not enough space to to make the rotation. So we're gonna have a demonstration. There's a couple things that make this safe. The fact that we're gonna do it with greater than a foot between the cat and the pillow. The pillow's there in case the cat has like past injuries that I don't know about, so it doesn't make it, but it will. And then the fact that we're not going to put angular momentum into the system. If we put angular momentum in the system, not only does it have to counteract not having angular momentum, but it also has to like reject the angular momentum that I'm putting in, so we're not going to do that. And because they can learn how to deal with that, but I don't know if the cats learn how to do that. It's not been dropped enough times. But yeah.